the best, hands down, easily, the best platform out there is WordPress, in my opinion. Here's why. WordPress. It's the largest platform of websites around the world. So it's open source. You download WordPress, you can buy a theme, they're like $80. Then you can go build. It's incredibly secure. It's super user-friendly. SEO is perfect for WordPress. And there are a lot of great themes that make it user-friendly for you to edit your website. So, I mean, my default answer is WordPress. If a church is asking me, Jason, we're thinking about rebuilding our website, what would you recommend? WordPress.
This is season 4, episode 8 of the Missional Marketing Podcast, the 132nd time that Jason Hamrock and I have put together content for you to help your church grow by leveraging digital marketing and effective communications. All right, there's all the preamble. Jason Hamrock, my why do I always say that? I struggle with that so much. My co-host. Why can't I just say co-host? I always want to say co-podcasting partner. I don't know why. It's so much more difficult to say. Jason, thanks for being on Zoom with me today.
Glad to be here, Bart. I'm excited for our episode today because we get to dive back into one of my favorite things is burning questions.
Burning questions. Thanks. If you're new to the show, you might not know that this is a new thing to the show. This is the second time that Jason and I are taking listener and Facebook group people questions and just answering some questions related to digital marketing, communications, staffing, like you name it. We've got a whole list of questions here. And for those of you who are sending in questions, keep it up. You can send any of your burning questions directly to me at my email address. It's bblair@missionalmarketing.com. Just put in the subject line that it's a question for the podcast or that it's a burning question. Otherwise, I might literally just reply to your email and answer your question because, well, that's what I do. Jason convinced me a couple of years ago that I needed to have a zero inbox policy. I don't know how many of you do that. Do you still do that, Jason? Are you pretty good?
Yeah, it crawls up. I'm kind of busy these days, but I try to keep it as low as possible. I'm moving it around. Yeah. So Jason has trained me. You get an email, you respond to it, you file it, you move on. So if you send me an email with a question in it, I might just answer your question, file it, and then move on. But if you indicate that it's for the podcast, we'll add it to our list of questions here. And maybe, just maybe, we'll answer your question on one of our upcoming episodes. Well, we're going to answer at least one question that's come from a listener recently. And we've got a whole bunch of other questions that have come from Church Communications Facebook group and some of our team and some of the church comms folks that they're working with. And we're going to answer some of those questions. Jason, before we get into our first burning question, is there anything that you want to add? You want to preface this with anything? No, but if you've got something on your mind and you want us to speak into it, please don't be shy. Because we love talking about this stuff. And I tell you what, if you try and stumble us, we could probably go do some research on our end, but this is literally off the top of our head. So I have no idea what Bart's going to ask me, and he doesn't have any idea what I'm going to ask him. I literally have an Excel sheet of questions. I'm just going to pick one and go. So it is literally going to be on the top of our head.
Yeah. I mean, we could end up renaming these episodes Stump the Chumps because got a couple of chumps here. You could ask them some questions and stump the chumps. Okay. Well, let's get on with it. Let's get into the content. Last time you lost the coin toss, so I asked you the first question. And well, because you're still the CEO of Missional Marketing, I'm still going to ask you the first question. So you get to answer the first question here. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right. What tools should I use to organize communication requests at my church? What tools should I use to organize communication requests at my church?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of different ways a lot of different tools that I know of that are really effective. And regardless of the tool you use, I think it's really, really, really important that you hold the line that everybody uses this same tool in the same form, in the same procedure, in the same way, because you got to kind of train your peers, people you're working with well. But if you have a project management system like Asana or Monday or Basecamp, you can create forms in there where you're requiring them to fill out all the detailed information as much as they possibly can and submit that to you. Now, to me, that's super important. Here's what I like to do. This is what I like to coach churches on is it doesn't, it's not as if you have to have them do it at a certain time point. If they know they've got an event coming up next July, and here we are in September, ask them to fill it out, right? The sooner, the better. You're going to get as much details as you possibly can so that you can go back and have a conversation with the ministry to answer more questions that they maybe didn't quite fill out all the way or make sure you totally understand. But I think it's really, really important to have a very exhaustive list of questions, forms for them to fill out. And using those tools like Asana, I think that's probably it's our project management system we use at Missional Marketing is Asana. A lot of churches use it. It's very powerful, but there's a lot of great ones as well, like Monday and, Basecamp and whatnot. But I think it's important that if you have that system, you have that strategy in place, you have to make sure they follow through. You can't have side, I call hallway conversations, right? I can't just pop your, hey, I forgot to fill this out, but can you make sure nope, you can't. Sorry, please go fill out the form. Get your staff, even your leadership in the habit of filling that out. Last thing on that, I literally was on a call today with a lead pastor who was talking to us about maybe some help we could provide them for some communications. And I go, what's your project management system? He goes, we don't have one. He goes, I'm probably the biggest fault at it. I'm like, well, pastor, that's not going to, if you don't have that in place, you're just asking for trouble down the road. He's like, I know. I go, especially next year when you do the same event, but you don't have any follow-up of what took place. That's not going to help you in the long run. So super important and a great question.
Yeah. Bart, well, let me give you my condensed version of that. Everything that you said is right on the money. My tools of preference. I'll just share my tools of preference. I'm a big fan of JotForm. I love JotForm. If you're using Asana, you can create forms in Asana. You can also API from JotForm into Asana, I think. I like Asana. I've used Basecamp. I've used Asana. I've used a few other different project management softwares. I'm visual, and I like the fact that in Asana, you can create a very visual tracking form to track projects. The honest truth is the two most important things are that you have a mechanism for collecting the information that you need on those requests and that you have a way of tracking yourself. So you could literally just use a Google form and use Google Sheets to track the projects. But you hit the nail on the head when you said you have to get everybody in the church using the form, everybody on the staff. And I'm going to give a shout out to Jacob at Tabernacle Church in Ennis, Texas, because when he took on his role in church communications, he wanted to really, really emphasize that everyone needed to be using the same form all the time. So he created a form, and then he created a QR code to go with it. And he printed this giant QR code and hung it to his office door so that everyone always has access to the form. Just walk to his door and scan the QR code. I think in their staff meetings, he always includes a copy of the form or the copy of the QR code in their notes when they're doing their staff meetings. He keeps that QR code in front of everyone so that, everyone knows what the form is. And there's no excuse. Somebody says, well, I couldn't find the form. Oh no, the QR code is, 15 inches by 15 inches on his office door. You can't miss it. So I'll leave that at that. I think that it was very clever. I thought it was very clever when he did that, but you're right on. It has to start from leadership, the top, and get everybody on board to be able to do that. So hopefully those answers are helpful.
All right, let's move on. My turn to ask you. Here we go.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. All the churches in our city are doing all the things to point people to their church, right? So our church is number 8+ on the list. How do we move up?
So I assume what we're talking about here is local SEO, local search engine optimization.
Probably need to explain what that is.
Yeah. So quick rundown. People get online and they Google church near me or churches near me or church in my city. and you get a list of churches. You get a local pack, which would be the top 3. Maybe you get some ads. If you're in maps, you get, I think, 20 on the first page. Yep. And so this church is saying that all the churches are doing things, all the churches are doing all the things to point people to their church. Your church is number 8 on the list. Couple of quick things that are pretty relevant and that will move the needle quickly. Number 1 is you need to make sure that you have local schema markup on your website. Google it if you don't know what it means. If you don't know how to spell it, just try local schema markup. There is code that needs to go on your website so that the search engines can actually find your address and they know physically where you are. The second thing, I'm going to camp out on this for just a second, and then I'll let you, jump in what you think. Being an active user in your Google business profile will never fail you at getting more clicks to your church website. And I think over time, being active in your Google business profile will probably help with your local search rankings. Let's face it, there are a few things you can't control. You can't control how close a person is to your campus when they're searching. You can't control how many churches there are in your area. You can't control what the other churches are doing. But you have control of your Google business profile. So you need to be using it. You need to be creating events. You need to be updating photos. You need to be posting in it, updates, soliciting reviews, responding to those reviews, anything and everything that you can do to use that Google business profile, squeeze it for all the juice that it's worth, because I think Google will reward you with better search rankings as a result of using the tool that it's created that it wants you to use. I'll stop there and let you jump in.
Well, I've always said when you're trying to get reviews and you're responding to reviews and photos, and by the way, videos, sermon snippets, you can add up to 30 seconds of video on your Google business profile. Google's watching, right? And not only is that best practice because Google's watching, but people are watching so they can see what you're doing there too. That's maybe the difference for them going, I want to learn more. Click on the website, right? So what Bart just said was really, really good. Google business profile. The other side of that would be, this is probably something you might have to ask us to help you with, and that is understanding your directory listings. You want to go into that one, or you want me to take it?
Go ahead. Okay. I can jump into that.
So this is all about, so when we say local SEO, there's 2 types of SEO. On-page SEO has to do with your website, and local SEO. Local SEO is another word for brick and mortar. Brick and mortar optimization. It's your physical presence. It's your physical location inside of where you are inside of Google. So Google only knows if you're in the right spot and open for business based on your Google business profile and all the other different directory listings that you have at your church. Another word for directory listings is citations. So things like Facebook and Bing and Yelp and Yellow Pages and Dex and list goes on and on and on. There are tons of directory listings. So Google here in nanoseconds is figuring out, okay, somebody just typed in churches near me. Let's put them in, let's give them a list of churches, because that's the key word. You're not going to find a hardware store in that listing. You're going to find churches. Well, Google's quickly looking to see, are these churches, these businesses open for business in the right spot? Well, how do they verify? Well, they verify by looking at all the different directory listings that this one business is associated with. And so making sure you're direct. So for example, if you've changed your name, you might have a whole bunch of errors and Google's not sure if you're open or not, right? Or you moved locations. I literally have a church who's opening a new worship center across the street. That's a different address. Mm-hmm. It's a new address. So you have to make sure all that stuff is accurate if you want to climb up the rankings. That's just one part of it. If you want to climb up the rankings, you got to do that work. But like you said, we could go on forever on this one. It's probably enough.
Yeah, we actually have some other videos on our YouTube channel that talk about local SEO. So if you go to our YouTube page, and just search local SEO. You'll find some other videos. And we have a number of blog posts on our website as well, missionalmarketing.com. You can go to the blogs, search for local SEO articles, and you can get more information about that. But, straightforward, simple, roll up your sleeves, use your Google business profile. It won't get you into number 1, but it'll actually improve your rankings. So, all right. Did you just ask me that question? You just asked me that question. So I'm asking you a question now. Okay.
Here we go.
This is the second. This is the second round. Round 2. Okay. Jason, this is a softball for you. What are the best website platforms for churches?
That's a great question. And it kind of depends on the size of church you're at. And, are you a church plant? Do you have 50 people or 5,000 people? So I could probably break it down because I think obviously the amount of talent you have around you would impact my answer. But I'm just going to tell you the best, hands down, easily, the best platform out there is WordPress. And it doesn't really have a second, in my opinion. Here's why. WordPress. It's the largest platform of websites around the world. So it's open source. You download WordPress. You can buy a theme. They're like $80. Then you can go build. It's incredibly secure. It's super user friendly. SEO is perfect for WordPress. And there are a lot of great themes that make it user friendly for you to edit your website. So, I mean, and my default answer is WordPress. If a church is asking me, Jason, we're thinking about rebuilding our website, what would you recommend? WordPress. The only change I the only difference I'd say is if you're running Rock as a church management system, you should run a Rock website. You should build your website inside of Rock. If you're a smaller church and you're using Planning Center or CCB, there's a lot of third-party website platforms that you could jump into. Squarespace is probably another one that's really, really popular. I'd probably stay away from Wix. I see a lot of church websites on Wix, but just not very.
You might get some emails about that one. We're not disparaging Wix.
Well, it's not. There's definitely better ones that you can jump into. It's going to be more, more powerful for you.
Yeah.
But Squarespace isn't bad for sure. Then you've got your third, party, like I'm thinking of Ecclesia or Clover or some of those different websites that they bounce in and out. Seems like they've been bought out some, so I don't keep track of the names of them. But they're not bad out of the box. You literally plug and play. And for a smaller church, that's a really good solution. You pay like $20 or $40 or $50 a month, and you got yourself a decent website. And if you're small and that's what you can handle, awesome. So platform wise, though, I'd say WordPress. A whole nother conversation about the purpose of your website and the focus of your website. That's a different conversation. But as far as platforms are concerned, WordPress is number one in my mind.
Okay. Do I get some time with that? Okay. Agree. WordPress would definitely be where WordPress would be where you want to be. Everything else, I think, is a distant second. I will say that there are a number of companies, and again, I'm not 100% sure who's still around and who's not. Yeah. I do know, and I'm not going to name names, but I'm just going to say this. I would never build. I'm a church planter. I'm a pastor. I would never build a website with a platform that is run by a company that designs and develops software, applications, and websites for churches, if that's what they do. And you can figure out who those people are, because there are a lot of companies that have started with one particular thing that they do. And as they have grown their menu of services and offerings to churches, they just add websites. And there's a handful of them out there. And the honest truth is they're just not great. Most of them really, really lack in SEO. And that's really where they tend to struggle the most. As a church planter, we're planting a church right now. We have built our first website on Squarespace. We chose Squarespace because it's inexpensive and we could get a website up with pretty decent SEO capability in a matter of a couple of hours. When we get ready, we're in pre-launch, and we'll use this website, this Squarespace website, as long as we're in pre-launch. When we get ready to actually launch, and we're going to build out our full website with all of our ministries and sermons and everything, we'll then build a WordPress website. That will be our long-term platform. I kind of think of Squarespace as sort of like the mobile home we're living in before we build the permanent home. That's kind of the way that I look at it. And I would say this, you kind of knocked Wix a little bit. I will give this to Wix. I think they've recognized that they're behind Squarespace in a lot of areas. And what I've seen with Wix is they've done a lot the last couple of years to improve some of the SEO capability and some of the other things that they do, because Squarespace is their primary competition and they've got to keep up with Squarespace. And I think Squarespace does a pretty decent job.
Let me one more final up, then I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
Don't be also, I would say this, don't be shocked. Oh, that's probably not the word. WordPress is open source and AI is growing like crazy. And I'll tell you right now, Katie Allred, who's, we're business partners with Katie, right? Katie just today Slacked me. She said, check out this amazing tool. And she literally built a church website in like 5 minutes using AI. She had AI look at the current website of the current church, and it spun out, it built the pages and everything in about 5 minutes. Now, you have to go back in there and swap out images and edit the content, but it was shockingly sharp. I'm like, wow. Whoa. So I'm just saying, hey, maybe that'll happen with those other platforms like Squarespace and Wix. Can AI play a part in building your church website? Yes. To what extent? I don't know, but it's growing every day. It's getting better and better.
That is very interesting. All right. Yep. What question you got for me?
Okay. Oh boy. I love this question. How can we get more views of our YouTube videos? Basically our sermons, Bart.
Oh man. I have actually had that conversation with 3 different comms directors in 3 different churches in the last 3 days. Love this question. Most people, when they set up their YouTube channel and start posting their sermon videos to their YouTube channel, they're thinking of YouTube as being a video player platform.
Yeah.
YouTube is not a video player platform. It is a search engine. And you need to think about posting your videos on YouTube in a way that allows the search engine to actually find them. Okay. So when you're creating a video, there's a reason why there's a section that you fill out the details about your video. YouTube gives you 5,000 characters. I typically go in and I'll do an audit on a church's YouTube channel, and they'll write like 2 sentences, and include the date that the sermon is preached. For starters, I would say this: if at all possible, leave dates off, or at least go back and edit dates out after a few weeks after you've posted it. Because when you date your content, I think it prevents it from being evergreen. And so I don't know about you, but if I'm looking for a video on something and I see 4 videos, I'm often looking for the most recent one posted. So if somebody's posted something 2 weeks ago and this one's clearly dated 2020 or 2021, I'm probably not going to watch it. I'm going to go for something that's newer. I don't know what it is, but I think that's true for a lot of people. So think about posting your videos and use the search engine concept. So writing out really detailed descriptions, creating titles for your videos that are maybe not necessarily the sermon title, but an answer to a question that you think someone searching would be asking. Okay. This is another common thing, is our pastor was really creative and he came up with a sermon title, and that's what we put in the title of the video. But why don't you call the title of the video something that actually explains what's in the video? Here's an example. I've shared this in another video on our YouTube channel. I preached a sermon series a number of years ago called Seeing Through the Fog. Any idea what it was about? Of course you don't, but it was very creative. But I did 3 or 4 weeks on what the Bible teaches about grief, what the Bible teaches about depression, what the Bible teaches about anxiety, what the Bible teaches about fear. And when I post those videos, those weren't the names of the sermons. It was Seeing Through the Fog, week 1, Seeing Through the Fog, week 2, Seeing Through the Fog, week 3. When I posted those videos on my YouTube channel, I did not call it Seeing Through the Fog, week 1. I called it What the Bible Teaches About Anxiety. And then I went and I wrote a description that included some of the scriptures and some things that would, help both the search engine as well as the searcher know what the content is. Here's another thing that you can do. You can actually, there are some tools that you can use, some plugins, and you can kind of look at the code behind the scenes. You can find other videos on YouTube that are on the same content topic that yours is. Pick videos that have a high view count, 100,000 views, 1 million views, and look and see what their tags are, their keywords, and use all of the same tags and keywords that are relevant to your video that are relevant to their video. Because what that does is that gives YouTube an incentive to show your video to other people who are watching similar content. And those are what we call suggested views. When someone's watching a YouTube video, we've all done this, right? You get to the end of the video and YouTube says, you might also like these. Well, why would YouTube know that? Well, it's using the keywords or the tags that I posted in that video. Last thing I'll say is thumbnails. You need to have great thumbnails for your videos because thumbnails, just like an ad, entice a click. And if you don't have a great, attractive thumbnail for your video, you're not likely to get a click. I'll say this, even about our own YouTube videos for our podcast. We've experimented with a lot of different things in our thumbnails. And it wasn't until like this season when we started actually changing up the way that we're doing the thumbnails on like every single episode. It has actually improved our click-through rate a lot on our videos because we've been experimenting, trying to find that right formula for the best thumbnail. So I could talk for hours about YouTube. I won't, but let me stop. What do you want to add? Anything?
I do. That's so good, especially when you're ripping off what other people have done by grabbing their keywords and whatnot. Genius. Like, come on. That's not hard.
Now, let me explain. Don't go and put Stephen Furtick in your keywords if your church is not Elevation Church. Don't do that. Like, that's just wrong. But hey, you know what? If Stephen Furtick has a video that has 1 million views and it's on a similar topic that yours is, you can look and see what the keywords are. Actually, churches like Elevation, they don't even really, I've looked, I don't think they even bother with putting legit keywords on what the videos are about. They just put Elevation Church and Stephen Furtick and that sort of stuff. It's
still, your point is very well taken. Cause I mean, that's just, that's just learn, people, like just let that seep in. I'll tell you one last thing is just go to our YouTube channel, Missional Marketing's YouTube channel. Bart did a video on this, like how to optimize your sermons. Like there's like 4 or 5 or 6, 7 steps to optimizing your sermons. Watch that video. And maybe you need to do an update with some of this newer thinking. You've probably updated that video.
Well, I'm actually using AI tools to help write my descriptions for the videos and to select the keywords as well. I mean, I've been using a tool called Claude.ai. This one, David Thorne from our team turned me on to Claude.ai. Claude, like the French name, CLAUDE.ai. We'll link to that in the show notes. And I've been using that because you can copy and paste your video transcript into it and ask it to write like a 500-word summary. And using that as the descriptor in the YouTube video. So
it's nuts. So if you're on your YouTube channel and you're watching a video, there's 3 little dots down to the right corner. Click on that, and I think it says like show the transcript, or something like that. YouTube will give you the transcript.
Yeah.
Just copy that, add it to Claude, and say write a 1,500-word blog post on this sermon, and then follow questions like write some social media posts, write some small group questions, right? It's amazing. And it's really, really good. Sorry.
All right. That was not a burning question. It was good. We will do another episode on AI tools. And oh, by the way, if you haven't checked out the AI for Churches podcast, make sure that you do that. Plug for the other Missional Marketing podcast, AI for Churches. Okay. You just asked me that question. I get to ask you a question. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
How do I get my pastor to understand the importance of communications, investing in staffing and budget, and giving the communications director a seat at the decision table?
Wow. How do I get my pastor to understand the importance of communications, investing in staffing, budget, giving comms director a seat at the decision table? Wow. That's a great question. Okay. So let's assume that your pastor doesn't understand the importance of communications. And there's probably a bunch of different reasons for that. If I was in that situation, I would approach your pastor with some a conversation, to sit down to say, hey, pastor, I want to learn from you on what you think is really important on how we should communicate. What's that look like? And, let him or her talk and open up about where they are with their level of engagement. And maybe you've had that conversation. You're like, I'm getting nothing, from this conversation. That's a tough one, because I think it's so critically important that you have a communications plan and that you get buy-in from the leadership. So one of the things that, like, I was at that position when I started at the church I worked at, I pioneered the communications department. Now, it was supported by the lead pastor, because I don't think I would have been hired if it wasn't, right? So I knew there was some buy-in, obviously, from the leadership level, but I wasn't from day one on the leadership team. I had to earn it. I had to think through and put together strategy and plans. And I just started rolling up my sleeves and getting to work. Now, this is a long time ago. We didn't have the same kind of technology. We didn't have a Facebook group of church communications where there's 33,000 plus I could ask a question. We didn't have people doing burning question podcasts. So I had to just figure out, how can I help the ministries be better at, communicating? But I learned quickly that there was a pecking order. And I went to the leadership team and said, here's how I, as Jason doing this job, how I can best support you. And this is my pecking order. And I always just put, my pastor was number one. He was my number one client, so to speak, right? And the weekend worship was number two. And then from there on, it kind of just like fell into place. So kids are pretty important, students, that kind of stuff. But I put together plans to say, this is how I can best support our church moving communications forward. So why I say that is this: if I were you and I'm in this position where you feel like you're not getting supported, well, roll up your sleeves and put together a game plan, right? And if you don't know what to do, go to church communications, join the Facebook group, and ask. You'll get a lot of people that will help you. But then I'd walk into I'd ask for a meeting with my leadership, my boss or the lead pastor, maybe that's the same person, and say, I have some questions for you. And you may not be able to answer those today, but I'd like you to think about this, because I want to excel at what I'm doing here to serve you and serve the church, and be a good steward of the salary that I get, and be a good steward of the tools that we have to further the kingdom here. So, Pastor, what's your view on how I should do my job? How do you value communicate? I would ask those questions, right? I'd write them all down. I'd ask them all. And if you get to a point where he's like, or she's like, well, what do you think? I mean, they turn the table. So, well, you tell me this. Well, I got a plan. Oh, you got a plan. I got a plan. Don't go empty-handed. Go prepared, that you're serious about your job of doing church communications and moving that ball down the field, and take that initiative. That's probably my 30,000 foot view right off the top of my head answer to how do I get leadership? How do I get to the table? You earn it. You don't ask for it. You're entitled to nothing. You've earned nothing. And don't ever, it's a whole scenario. Don't feel like I need to be first at the table. You'll be last. If you want to have the seat at the table, act and do according, like you are last. You serve up. I'm here to serve you. And when you have that kind of posture, that gets seen. Of course, we know this, right? This is what Jesus taught. Right. So don't feel like, well, I'm a comm director, I deserve. No, you don't. Just do your job and earn it, and it will get recognized, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much, when I get a question like this from a church, my natural instinct is to think that there are maybe some competing values, and some values that maybe are not aligned. And so I think it's really important, if you're reporting directly to the senior pastor, at the end of the day, the senior pastor is the visionary leader driving and the architect of the culture in your church. And you're going to have to probably align your values with his or her values as the primary leader. If you report to an executive pastor or an administrative pastor or someone else who isn't necessarily the one creating and driving the culture, I think it's good to go into those types of conversations that you said there, Jason, and say, help me understand what success in my role or with communications looks like to you. Now, on a very practical level, I would say this: if you have ever heard Jason or me or someone on our team share the 3 rings of communication, this to me is the best thing that you can have in your back pocket. So if I was coming to Jason, if Jason was my pastor and I'm an administrative person or a comms person or a person who is, completely out of the comms world, but I'm responsible for comms, whatever, I say, Pastor Jason, I want to share something with you that I've learned that I think is really important. There are 3 groups of people that we're responsible for communicating to. Ring 1, these are our people. These are the people that attend Missional Church, and God's brought them to our family. We've got their names, their phone numbers, their email addresses, and we have to make sure that we have a good, effective communication strategy to communicate to those Ring 1 people. Then Ring 2, the people outside of that group, there are people in our community that are actively looking for a church, and I think that we have a responsibility to figure out how we can intersect with those people the best way possible, because we got something great going on here and we want to share that with those people. And then, Pastor Jason, there are a whole lot of other people out in the community who aren't necessarily actively looking for a church. This is Ring 3. Those people have some felt needs and some issues and some struggles, and we have some great ministries that could actually help them overcome some of those. And so the pain point that I have as the communications director or communications person in the church is understanding how you want me to prioritize those 3 rings and the way that we're communicating to those 3 rings so that we can together decide how to allocate time and human resources and financial resources to communicating to those 3 groups. So can we work together to come up with a strategy that you are helping me define, but then that I can go and execute on? That's what I would do. I don't know. Do I get the job, Jason? Would you hire me?
That's a really strong, you went in there equipped with something.
Yeah.
And you thought through it. And the only other advice, and then we can move on, is surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you. Talk to somebody about, like, how should I do this? And go to another ministry, somebody else you really, you not only would cherish their information, like you trust them. There's somebody that would give you good advice on how you should approach this. But I think that's another thing I'd probably do is get some good coaching, or find a peer that would speak into it for me.
Okay. We have time for one more question. You still have one more. This is the last one for round 3 for me, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. So here it goes. Same vein as the pastor. Okay. My pastor still wants to print postcards and promo materials, right? Is this a good use of our money? Print material?
Yes, but. Okay. All right. Yeah. I have no problem with printed material as long as, number 1, we understand how to calculate a return on that investment. We understand the limitations of printed materials, and we use those printed materials in the right place and the right time. So here's an example. Again, we're planting a church, a small group of people who are part of my church planting team. We recently went and served at a back to school event in our community. And we actually printed some postcards to use to promote our church and to do a survey. Now, we only printed what we thought we needed for that particular event because we were only handing them out. We were not mailing them out. So in that particular case, printing those postcards made a lot of sense. When we go to actually launch, we will probably do some mailers, but we're going to actually prioritize digital a whole lot more over printing. And the reason we're going to do that is simply because we can scale it. You can scale a whole lot more digitally. You can reach more people in a shorter period of time. You can better track whether or not people are seeing your ads and clicking on your ads. From a cost efficiency standpoint, there's no comparison, digital to print. Print is very expensive. But you know what? I think that depending on what you're promoting, when you're promoting it, I think that there is a time and place for mailing. But I would not say mailing is an instead of digital. I would say mailing is today a supplement to digital. It needs to be on top of what you've committed to digital, not replacing what you're doing in digital. Any thoughts on that, Jason?
Yeah, I'm still a fan of traditional methods of advertising. They still work. There's a reason why those traditional methods still do, generate millions and if not billions of dollars of revenue because they work. Like billboards work, radio and TV can work, direct mail pieces work.
Yeah,
but you have to be able to track it. So if I only had so much money, I'm certainly focused on our congregation. If you have a congregation, your church might be a little bit different. If you have a congregation, they're the best people to invite, reach, bring their friends, family, coworkers, enemies, mother-in-law, everybody, right?
Yeah.
Your own people. But I think second after that would be a digital way of connecting with people, because it's all trackable and it's a lead generator. I can actually capture names, emails, cell phone numbers off of those digital paths that you can't do it with a direct mail piece. And you're kidding yourself if you think, I'll put a QR code, we'll track it. You might cry at the end of the campaign, because you're like, yeah, we had this QR code. We sent 50,000, postcards out to lots of homes, and we had like 12 people that scanned it in. Right. I mean, not the best. I still think it's great, but it's that old adage of like multiple touch points is what's really needed in order for marketing to kind of work.
Yeah.
And so, it's like your own people, digital, maybe some direct. I am a fan of like new homeowner direct mail pieces, like buy that list of new homeowners. You're very targeted. It's a smaller list, so the postage is less and the printing's less. And in once a quarter, maybe you send out 2 or 3 direct mail pieces to those people who bought a new home. So I kind of like that strategy. It's a different approach, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's much more targeted and less just shotgun blast. So I agree with that. And I just to piggyback on something you were saying there, is that your own people are the best source for connecting with people outside the church that don't yet attend the church. And one of the ways that you can equip the people in your church is by printing great quality material that they can use as personal invitations. So, in my last church that I was pastoring, we printed postcards for everything that we did. We printed enough to distribute to our church family. And I stood on the stage and I said, hey, when you came in today, you got the postcard for this thing that we have coming up. I didn't print this postcard so that you could line your floorboard in your car with it or hang it on your refrigerator. I printed these cards so that you could invite someone that you know that I don't know. And you're going to save me the postage by actually delivering it to someone that you know that I don't know. And I tell you what, it's going to mean a whole lot more to them. That invite is going to mean a whole lot more to them coming from you than it would if it came through USPS or Canada Post, right? I was using Canada Post because I was in Canada, but you get what I'm saying there. So you're right. I think, there is some value in traditional advertising, but your advertising and your marketing strategy has to be holistic. At the end of the day, I can't remember who I heard say this, and I wish I could remember. Ariel, the Little Mermaid, said, "We want to be where the people are." We want to be where the people are. And where are the people? The people are online. They're on their phones. They're on their tablets. They're on their computers. That's where we want to be. And so we need to be marketing and promoting where people are. My wife and I, my office, I can see out my corner of my office, the super mailbox that all of our neighbors go to. And I can tell which neighbors only pick up their mail like once every 2 or 3 weeks, because they open their mailbox and they have like 85 things hanging out of it, right? Because it's all junk mail. I mean, my wife goes out every couple of days, every 2 or 3 days, gets the mail, and 9 out of 10 things, 10 out of 15, 10 out of 12 is usually junk. There's very, very rarely anything that's personal, because we just get everything via email and digital, right? So anyway, I'm rambling. This has been a really long podcast episode. So if you've made it here to the end, thank you so much. Thank you for your loyalty and sticking things through with us. Jason and I appreciate the fact that we have so many of you out there listening. Send in your questions. If you have a burning question that you want us to answer, email them to bblair@missionalmarketing.com. Put in the subject line that it's a burning question for the podcast. If you haven't ever left us a rating and review wherever you listen to the show, make sure that you do that. That helps more people find it. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, you can engage with us there. Make sure that you subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified about future episodes. Jason, thanks for hanging out with me today. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Bart.